Have you ever thought that, after failing too many times, life has already made its final decision about you? Abraham Lincoln didn't think so. For nearly 30 years, he failed again and again. In business and in politics. He went bankrupt. He lived in debt. He lost almost every election he entered. Not once. Not twice. But 10 times. At the point where most people would have stopped, Lincoln kept moving forward. Not because he was certain he would win, but because he believed that quitting was the only real failure. And then, at the age of 51, after decades of rejection and doubt, the man once seen as a failure became President of the United States. His name was Abraham Lincoln, and his story challenges how we define failure. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809, in a small log cabin near Hodgenville, Kentucky. No electricity, no comfort, no signs that this boy would ever become someone great. He grew up in a poor farming family, where every single day was a fight, just to survive. When Lincoln was still very young, his mother passed away. His childhood began with loss. The rare source of support in his life was his stepmother, a woman who believed that knowledge could open a way out. She encouraged him to read, even though their home held almost nothing but hard labor and constant struggle. Throughout his teenage years, Lincoln attended school for less than 1 year. No degree, no formal education, no advantages. Yet people often saw him walking miles just to borrow a single book, then teaching himself in silence, under the dim light of an oil lamp. And from that lowest place, a quiet belief began to form. As he entered adulthood, Abraham Lincoln left behind a childhood of poverty and stepped into life on his own. No money, no connections, nothing but his hands, and a deep hunger to escape the fate laid out before him. He took on every kind of manual labor he could find, but none of those jobs offered stability. None of them promised a future. At the age of 22, Lincoln tried business for the first time. He opened a small store with friends, believing this might be his first real way out. But that hope collapsed quickly. The store failed, and the debt it left behind followed him for years. Surrounded by repeated failures, Lincoln did not stop learning. He taught himself grammar, mathematics, and one day, through an old borrowed book, he discovered the study of law. No mentor, no guidance, no guarantee of success. But for the first time in his life, he felt he had found a direction, even though the road ahead was still completely unclear. When Abraham Lincoln first stepped into politics, he believed that effort and honesty would be enough to make a difference. Reality disagreed. At the age of 23, Lincoln ran for the Illinois state legislature and lost. He returned to ordinary work, carrying his first taste of rejection, but not his last. Just 1 year later, he failed in business again. Crushing debt followed him, forcing Lincoln to live in hardship for nearly 2 decades. Still, he kept studying law, and he kept moving forward, even though he had no certainty that this path would lead anywhere at all. Lincoln tried again, and failed again. He entered election after election, and lost over and over. Lost the race for governor. Lost his bid for Congress. Lost even after having once won a term. Each time he fell, he stood back up and kept walking. No fame. No widespread support. Only a quiet persistence that almost no one noticed. For most people, that many defeats would have been enough to quit forever. But Lincoln did not stop. At 46, he lost his race for the Senate. 1 year later, he lost his bid for vice president. Then again, he lost another Senate race. 30 years passed this way. Failure after failure. No dramatic victories. No clear turning point. Just one man, repeatedly rejected by history, who refused to reject his own path. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States. At the age of 51. At an age when many people had already accepted stopping. Lincoln was only just beginning the greatest opportunity of his life. Not after a series of victories, but after decades of failure and doubt. That victory did not bring immediate trust. A former farmer, no formal degree. A man who had lost election after election. Could someone like that lead a nation? Standing on the edge of collapse? Almost immediately after Lincoln took office, America entered the darkest crisis in its history. Civil war erupted. The nation was torn in two. And all eyes turned to the man few believed in. Instead of removing the rivals who had opposed him, Lincoln chose a different path. He brought them together. He appointed former critics, even enemies, to positions of power, placing the country above his own ego. Amid chaos and relentless pressure, Lincoln made decisions that would change history. He preserved the unity of the United States. And he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This was not the result of luck. It was the result of a man forged by failure, and ready to stand firm when the decisive moment finally arrived. Abraham Lincoln is not remembered by history for an easy path. He is remembered for a lifetime journey. One that began with poverty, loss, and failures that seemed endless. From a boy born in a small log cabin, with almost no formal education, Lincoln walked a road few believed could ever lead to the highest seat of power. When his era came to an end, the name Abraham Lincoln was no longer tied only to the title of President of the United States. It stood for something greater. His choices and his legacy reached far beyond a single term in office, becoming inseparable from the history of America itself. In the end, Abraham Lincoln became a legendary president, one of the greatest heroes the nation has ever known, carved into Mount Rushmore alongside other extraordinary leaders. His name was etched permanently into stone and time. From the lowest possible beginning, his legacy stands forever as the symbol of a man who walked his entire path and never turned back. The story of Abraham Lincoln shows us that failure is not the opposite of success. In many cases, failure is the path that leads to it. Lincoln didn't win because he was the smartest, the richest, or because he started with more than others. He won because he stayed in the game longer than anyone else. Real success rarely comes early. It usually appears after you've been rejected again and again, doubted again and again, and tested to the point where it feels like there's nothing left to lose. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they quit too soon. Lincoln reminds us that the road ahead doesn't have to be clear from the beginning. What matters is that you keep moving, even when progress is slow. Even when no one believes in you. Time eventually stands with those who are patient enough to keep going, before the results ever appear. There are periods in life when progress is almost impossible to see. Every effort seems to disappear into silence, and doubt grows louder than belief. But those are the moments where real strength is built. If you're still moving forward, even slowly, even without clear results, you haven't lost. You're simply in the middle of the journey. If stories like this help you stay grounded and keep you from quitting too early, subscribe to the channel. We share stories about failure, persistence, and the long road to success. No false hope, no shortcuts.